Well, here we are at day 5. We started today with a drive to Raynham Hall. This one you can only book to go in as a group of 10 to 14 people at about £420 for the lot of you. And as we are only two, we decided that wasn't the most ideal way to see inside, but we were allowed to see the outside, and the personal assistant or housekeeper or whoever Mum was emailing said that it'd be all right to park up at the house or at the church, take a bunch of pictures of the church and the hall, and potentially bring a picnic with us if it was a nice day. But as we weren't there around picnic time, we didn't have a picnic. Alright, so for nearly 400 years, this has been the seat of the Townsend family. The most well-known resident was Charles Townsend, 2nd Viscount Townsend, from 1674 to 1738. He was a leader in the House of Lords. The construction began officially in 1622 after there had been a false start in 1619. And by the time of Sir Roger Townsend's death in 1637, it was substantially complete, minus furnishings, etc. Sir Roger undertook a 3-year grand tour, and Raynham was built in an entirely new style following Italian form and plan, with the exception of its hipped roof and Dutch gables. In 1713, Charles Townsend, the 2nd Viscount Townend, married Robert Walpole's prettiest sister, Dorothy. She was his second wife and previously had been the mistress of Lord Wharton. He hired William Kent to change the style of Raynham to more closely align with Palladianism. He worked here from 1725 to 1732, added the north wing, and decorated the interior. Maybe one day we will find 10 to 14 people to go around with us and we'll all go together. It's amazing to think that this family home is still privately owned and has done so since the 1600s. It's absolutely amazing and fascinating to me. All right, I'll let you watch till we get to Houghton Hall, and I will talk to you again soon. Our next port of call being Houghton Hall, we were a little bit early for by about half an hour, so we decided to go through a bit of a drive. And so we decided to drive to the neighbouring village of Anmer, where Prince William and Catherine were given a home by Queen Elizabeth. We didn't get to see the home, nor were the family out for a little walk in the village. But we went and we pulled into the churchyard and got a lovely view of the church, and then drove back to Houghton again. I know I've spoken about Houghton in a previous year's video, but we had the delightful pleasure today of getting to see the gardens, which we didn't have a chance to do last time. So here are the gardens and the lovely wisteria arch. The sun was trying to come out, but there was still quite the nip in the air, which wasn't very nice, but that's all right. Also at the hall is an exhibition of modern art by Sean Scully. So if you see some odd, out-of-place looking sculptures in various places, you know why. Oh, and the foxgloves were out. Aren't they beautiful? Anyways. All right, let's get started. Houghton was commissioned by the first British Prime Minister, Sir Robert Walpole, in 1722, and is an example of Neo-Palladian architecture in England. This site had previous versions of Walpole family houses built on it, but what you see today is the last version of the various houses. Houghton once contained part of Robert's great picture collection. Alas, his grandson, the 3rd Earl, sold a lot of it in 1779 to cover his debts, and he sold it to Catherine the Great of Russia. Her portrait hangs in the house, just to show where a lot of the house's wealth kind of ended up. Another famous feature of the house is the state bed. It was designed by William Kent, who was responsible for the decoration of the interior of the house, and this bed is green silk velvet hung bed with a shell motif and embroidered with silver gilt thread. Also, I didn't know this, but it's actually on loan to the house from the Victoria and Albert Museum, which I find quite interesting and a bit strange. Anyways, who knows? All right, I'll let you enjoy the rest of Houghton and the drive to Hindringham. On our way to Hindringham, we came across a large Tesco's, so we decided to go in and get some provisions as we were running a bit of ahead of schedule for Hindringham Hall. We also, on our way through this little town, and don't quote me, I do apologize, I don't remember what it was called or where we were to be precise. I just know we were somewhere between Houghton and Hindringham. Maybe there's a signpost. I don't know. But we were driving through the village and we came across a Nat West bank, which we had been looking for. So we paid to park for half an hour for 50 pence. And Mum went in a dress shop and I ran over to the Nat West bank and I got my, well, not all of my £50 notes changed, but I got some of my £50 notes changed to 10s and 20s. And thank heavens for that, because otherwise we would still be suffering those banknotes, which would be very unfortunate indeed, as nobody takes £50 banknotes. If you are ever given £50 banknotes by anyone at an exchange office, exchange them and return them and ask for something else, because nobody will take them over here because there are so many counterfeits that it's too much money for any business to lose should it be a fake one. Also, the NatWest Bank in this little village is set to close on August 10th of 2023. So for those of you that know where this village is, your local NatWest is leaving you later this year. Okay, I'll shut up. On to Hindringham. Alright, so we finally made it to Hindringham, which is a lovely moated manor house that has ties back to 1086. Even though not much other than the moat remains from that time frame, it was rather charming, to say the least. And after our tour around, we got tea and cake in the tea hut, or tea house, or call it what you will. The house that sits there now is pretty much from the Tudor era, built in 1538 or thereabouts by a courtier who got rich during the service of King Henry VIII, and it was in decline once Gerald Goslin from Bengeo Hall, Bengeo, Bengo Hall, restored it in the 1900s. Previously, the oldest section of the house, before the rest existed, was used as a fishing area. There were 4 fish ponds at the back, which held pike, carp, eel, and perch, I believe were the 4 he mentioned. And once the fish were large enough, they were moved the fish from the larger ponds and put them into the smaller ponds, making them easier to catch with a net. Orders for fish would then arrive for parties, etc., and the fish would be caught, put in barrels of water, and sent to wherever they were required. The house was added on to around 1538 using the rubble of 2 fairly nearby Catholic churches. One was an abbey and one was a priory, which were demolished as King Henry took control of the church and Catholicism was even more frowned upon. The Tuckers, who now own it, have made a lovely job of looking after it since Mr. Gosling was. They have now owned it for 30 years, and there are some holiday cottages that you can rent for a week, one of which is inside of the moat, which looked quite lovely but is a maximum of 2 guests. Then it was time for tea and cake, and then a return to the yellow house to get sorted out for our move tomorrow. Also, we found out that originally moats weren't necessarily for protection from invasion. Originally, moats were created because inside of the moat would be the granary or anything that was of high value that you didn't want to get ruined by animals and things that couldn't swim. Obviously, rats could swim, can swim, but various other animals can't swim the same, and so they can't get across the moat to get into the wheat or the grain stored in the middle of the moat in wood buildings and ruin your crop. So that was the original reason for moats. The other reason for moats is this particular house is in a valley, if you will, and originally the river went straight through the middle of where the moat is today, and they moved the river. And in moving the river, they of course had to make allowances for the water table. And so the moat is also excellent for if there is a flood or flash flooding, which I believe they had flash flooding. When did he say it was? I don't remember. Anyways, they were very, very lucky because in the valley and with moving the river, they very quickly had water that went up nearly to the top of the moat. And it was very lucky that they had the moat because the water settled in the moat and the house itself didn't flood. So that was the other advantage to having a moat, was if you were in a valley, the water kind of had somewhere to collect itself as opposed to collecting in your front room. All right, we will see you tomorrow and be good until then. Good night.